first podcast where we talk about things weed, cannabis, marijuana, all of those names, state regulations, stoner moments, and more. So really we're here as a resource to just educate the public. Things are changing a lot lately. There's 38 states with a legalized medical cannabis market. So if you didn't notice anything in your community, I'm sure your friends might have noticed going forward. But just want to break down some information about that. So welcome, it's the month of February, Black History Month, you feel me? And I just felt like it's important that we circle back to this. So the main cannabinoid of the day is going to be THC. Now, THC should be pretty familiar to some of y'all. You might have heard of it. It's also referred to as delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. Now, that is its official scientific name. And what THC and cannabinoids in general are, they are plant compounds. So you find them naturally in cannabis, in weed when they're growing. And what you see a lot of today is that growers, people who are raising these plants to be used for consumer products, they're breeding for specific strengths. So you might notice that, you know, if you have some aunties, some uncles, some grandparents that used to smoke back in the day and they stopped smoking and then they hit a joint now in these 2020s, they're saying, whoa, this is not the same. And that's because it isn't. The THC levels that we have today are almost 3 times as high as what they were back in 1996. So there's a lot of change that's been going on, but THC is the main psychoactive component. So what that means is it's the part that gets you high, the classic head high that you think about when you think of cannabis, weed, marijuana, etc. And so that is what THC does. And that is the main compound in the plant that is federally illegal under Schedule 1. Now, what THC can do, outside of just giving you that euphoric feeling, that head high moment, it also does connect to your CB2 receptors. Now, your CB2 receptors have a lot more to do with the body high effect that you might be experiencing, the feeling of floating. A lot of times it's going to be part of the medicinal effects of cannabis. So that's where you're gonna notice some anti-inflammatory actions going on. So if you do have grandparents, people like that with arthritis, what they want is to activate their CB2 receptors, and that's gonna give them a lot of that pain relief on a physical level. Now, what we get with THC is the CB1 receptor, and that is what is going to activate that classic head high once again. So when the government gets into things, when they decided to outlaw cannabis, everything like that, they really just wanted to prevent people from getting that classic head high. And what you see a lot of today in states and in local areas where they have medical cannabis, they're more so focused on the patient who has a qualifying condition like cancer, or who might have arthritis or multiple sclerosis, and the physical medicinal benefits that they can gain from cannabis versus what we see now in recreational or adult use states and markets, where anybody over the age of 18 or 21, depends on the state, is able to consume cannabis, get weed, smoke it, you know, do whatever they want, because in the eyes of the state, they're an adult, and that's doable. So medicinal cannabis is for patients. Okay, they get to talk to their doctors about it, and then they understand how that's gonna work for their sometimes lifelong conditions that they're dealing with. And then you have adult use and recreational cannabis, and that's just gonna be more so for, you know, whoever wants to do it, kind of like drinking. Now, with THC though, it is naturally occurring, so there's already certain levels. Again, like I said, the levels in these 2023, 2024 days are much stronger than what they used to be previously. But that is THC, baby, cannabinoid of the day. So the next thing we're going to talk about here are going to be state laws and regulations. So the state that we're highlighting today in February, is going to be North Carolina. Woo, 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 woo. Now, the thing about North Carolina, it's technically one of the worst states in the United States of America when it comes to cannabis legislation, which is crazy because as of 2023, I know we're in 2024 now, but like as of 2023, there were 38 states that had a legal medical cannabis market. So 38 states that said, hey, we have patients and this helps them deal with their quality of life, it helps them deal with their pain management, it helps them deal with all of these adverse symptoms as a result of their, ailment or whatever it is that they're going through. And they said we want to be able to provide them access to cannabis as a medicine, the same way people would be able to get access to Adderall or Ritalin or just anything that could officially help with a condition. So North Carolina is one of the lowest ranking states according to Americans for Safe Access, and they are a patient advocacy organization fighting to ensure that medical patients across the U.S. have access to cannabis, as a treatment if needed. Now, they do an annual state of the state reports where they just see what all of the states look like, what their regulations are showing, and how accessible and easy it is to navigate for consumers, for patient consumers in the area. And like a report card, there are letter grades assigned, and maybe North Carolina got a big fat F as of 2022, and that information was released in February of 2023. So we do have a new state of the state report coming up, but that's just to kind of set the tone. 38 states have at least a medical market, and North Carolina is not one of them. Now, what you can do in North Carolina is get access to CBD, and we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about what CBD is on the next episode. We're going to dive more into that cannabinoid, but CBD is another cannabinoid of cannabis. It's naturally occurring, but this one is federally legal under the 2018 Farm Bill. So that's why you see all these CBD shops out here now. And I'm sure y'all have seen a lot of other cannabinoids like HHC, Delta 8, CBN, things like that. But CBD and THC, those are the main two. So what you can do with CBD, it activates your CB2 receptors, and remember that's the body effects, that's the anti-inflammatory effects. That's going to be where you see a lot more of a physiological effect and support on a therapeutic level versus THC, again, which gives you that kind of head high, euphoric feeling when you're dealing with cannabis. So you can get access to CB2, and honestly, for a lot of medical patients, you can get access to CBD out here in North Carolina. And honestly, for many medical patients, CBD is what you're primarily looking to ingest. That's gonna have a lot of those medicinal effects, again, that I was saying, along with a variety of other cannabinoids. So it's not just gonna be CBD alone that does this, but for the most part, that's the main thing you're looking at. Medical patients don't necessarily need to get super high, they don't need to go off the deep end like adult use, recreational users, who just want to do something wild on a weekend might need to do or decide to do. So CBD is accessible, and you see a lot of that here in North Carolina, and CBD is part of the hemp industry because it's legal here underneath the Farm Bill once again. So you do see a big boom in the hemp industry. There are a lot of agricultural spaces here in North Carolina. There's a lot of hemp farms out here, and they also have a big a maneuvering industry. They are doing a lot more research into what's available in all of these other compounds within the plant that can be utilized outside of THC, which is the main part that we're seeing being federally illegal under Schedule 1. So North Carolina, it's got some work. It's got some work to do. There was a bill that got passed out of the Senate, I believe, trying to go ahead and get a legalized medical patient market going for cannabis, but it got stopped before it could pass the House, so we're going to see some more maneuvering. Personally, I think North Carolina is probably waiting out to be one of the last states to go legal, just to see how all the other states in the areas are kind of handling their own legalized market. So, kind of holding out, but at the detriment of who, which is in this case going to be medical patients who need access to quality care and deserve a better quality of living, So that's going to be the main difference there, but that's North Carolina. And it's really just a matter of time, because when you look at the East Coast, when you look at the Southeast, you've got DC, which is its own gray zone area. And then right underneath them, you got Virginia, which went medically legal. in 2020, and then it went recreationally legal. So it's just legal now out there, cannabis for any adult in 2021. And then that was a major thing, because Virginia would get you. If they thought you had some weed, they thought you had some cannabis, some product on you, they will stop and search and they would get you. So that was a major thing, especially me being from Maryland, that was a major thing to see when they switched over, not just medically, but recreationally. They said, we're going all in with that. So when you see big movers and shakers like Virginia, you know, swapping over, and kind of that domino effect going down the East Coast, and you see that there's also Florida, right, off the very end here on the east side, that is also medically legal. And just the domino effect is kind of sandwiching. So really on the East Coast alone, there's really just North Carolina and South Carolina that do not have any official marijuana legislation, any official laws or regulations regarding the plant. So really, it's really just a matter of time. Even Tennessee, which is right on the western side of North Carolina, they have legislation, they have laws available for their medical cannabis market. So it's a timing thing, baby. It's gonna happen sooner or later. But what you can do in the meantime is get THCA here in North Carolina. So that is a minor cannabinoid. It's one of those compounds that the government hasn't directly decided to handle, because again, the main two compounds that the government is focused on is CBD, which is federally legal. You can purchase that within the United States of America underneath the 2018 Farm Bill. And then there is THC, which is federally illegal. That's the main thing that's been outlawed. That's where all the bad media and press has been focused on, for the most part. That effect, the classic head high, euphoric feeling. So those are the main two compounds that the government is focused on. But a plant is a plant. It's living. So there's a lot of different things and parts and compounds, right, that also make up cannabis, right, that we just haven't really focused on as much, just because there hasn't been as much research allowed due to, you know, weed being Schedule 1 illegal. So you do have THCA. We'll talk more about that as well. We'll get more into the nitty-gritty of what that exactly means. But the big thing to keep in mind is that chemically, when you apply heat to this minor cannabinoid, it turns into THC. So that's a loophole you see a lot more I've seen in North Carolina and perhaps other states that do not have official cannabis laws and regulations, versus going into fully legalized areas like DC, DMV, New York. I'm not really seeing a lot of THCA products available. They just have, you know, a variety of other THC products. So that's just kind of a bit of a loop around. That's what you can do here in North Carolina, though. So it, you know, it's got its own effects. So maybe try that out next time. But that is the state of the day, baby. That's the state of the episode, North Carolina. So get around, you feel me? This episode is sponsored by Martian Moss, holistic herbs blended for your reason why. Used to enhance your smoking experience or brew as a tea. It's trend time now, so what are some new things we've been seeing out here in the industry? So one trend that I do want to talk about, one notable thing that majorly happened here, is a new recommendation on the federal level from the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So if you didn't know, not too long ago, Biden actually pardoned all federal prisoners who were being held on possession crimes for cannabis. So if you got arrested for having a little bit of weed in your pocket and you got sent to jail, or you got, you know, you're doing some time, Biden basically said, at this point, most states have a legal market. That's not something that we should be holding against you. So he let all the federal prisoners go. And expungement, I believe, is on the way to clear their records fully. But states still do not have, states still have some wiggle room, basically, to decide whether or not they're gonna pardon their own prisoners. Now, Biden did a really great thing with that, because he's really setting the pace that this is not something we're focusing on, like cannabis, acquiring it, possession, things like that. They really have specific things they're looking at, like, are you trafficking, weed cannabis with guns? You know, are you taking this across international lines? Are you transporting this across state lines? Are you endangering children with exposure to it? That's a lot more. Are you are you laundering money for like a crime syndicate? You know, like those are more so the things that the government is focusing on. And so Biden, along with pardoning those federal prisoners on possession crimes, also told the Secretary of Health and Human Services to do a survey and a report officially on the medical benefits and utilizations of cannabis. Now, that's something that has been going on, honestly, since it was first legalized in 1937. Since it was first, excuse me, not 1937, that's the Marijuana Tax Act. Since it was first legalized with the Controlled Substance Act, excuse me. So research has been a continuous thing over decades. We clearly have a lot of research. There's just a catch-22 of the fact that because it's federally illegal, you're not supposed to be able to do research utilizing it unless you get specific access. And before that, you only got access if you were partnered with the University of Mississippi until a couple of years ago. Now, at this point, there's a lot more freedom and a lot more availability for outside parties to do their own cannabis testing, which is why we see such a major exploding of just different cannabis products. There's so many different products here now. There's so many different pins you can get, so many different pre-rolls, things like that. And that's because people have a lot more access to doing their own research. Now, before this point, the research was just never good enough. You know, more research was being required because the DEA just didn't, in my opinion, the DEA just didn't want to go ahead and renege on this war on drugs that they started. But Biden said, let's do one more thorough look at it. Let's look at all of these decades worth of research and let's make a decision on the state of cannabis. Does it actually have medicinal therapeutic use? And if it does have therapeutic uses, if that is decided, that would at a minimum take it out of being Schedule 1, which is the top illegal controlled substance, to being Schedule 2, which is saying, hey, there are medical benefits to this drug as well, and it's not just, you know, a danger to the public. Opioids, for an example, are Schedule 2, and we already know that we have an opioid crisis going on. Now, that being said, the secretary did their research, they looked at reports, they compiled information, they did their meta review, and they basically said that there is information showing that there are real medical benefits to utilizing cannabis, and that they recommend that the drug be removed from Schedule 1 and instead be placed in Schedule 3. So that's going to take it right below opioids, which is saying that there's also a high potential for abuse in that situation. So Schedule 3 makes it a little bit more easier. It would also allow doctors to officially prescribe cannabis, because they can't do that right now. They might get their letters yoked up depending on how serious the federal government feels like being with them. But they do have their own liberties, especially if they operate in states with legal markets. Now, what doctors can do right now is recommend. They can say, hey, I think you should check this out, but they cannot write you a prescription to go down to this dispensary and pick up this product. It's covered by insurance, things like that. They can't do that yet. Scheduling it into Schedule 3, though, would allow them that freedom. It would also open the doors for patients, medical patients, to get their cannabis covered by insurance. And that's really big because as a patient, you are consistently spending money on something that you need. This isn't just something you want, like adult use or recreational users. This is something that you need to, you know, continue living a well-balanced life. Now, so that is really big, because those are one of like the big movers and shakers, you know, saying, hey, we're gonna officially see some major change. Because not only did the Secretary of Health and Human Services make that recommendation, the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, also made a similar recommendation to get cannabis rescheduled into Schedule 3. So at this point, it's really kind of just down to the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, to take those two major recommendations in consideration and then change the laws in regards to scheduling of cannabis. So it's really just a matter of time. It's always been a matter of time, but right now you can really see the domino effect and how things are trickling over bit by bit by bit. So that's super exciting. That's the trend I wanted to talk about, y'all. Keep an eye out because there's gonna be some federal switch up coming soon. Now the next thing we're gonna do here is have an org highlight. Whoop whoop. Now we wouldn't really be here this deep into a legalized cannabis market, like where things are just so accessible now, without the advocacy of organizations to pave the way. And one thing I really want to highlight is that there would be no legalized medical market, there would be no legalized adult use market. There just wouldn't be a legalized market for cannabis without patients and patient advocacy. Now, the organization I want to talk about right now is going to be the Last Prisoner Project. And what they do, they are a nonprofit organization that works to expunge the records of those who have been held on possession charges and crimes. So like I just said, Biden federally pardoned all of the prisoners who were being held on possession crimes. They had an eighth of weed in their pocket and got arrested. He said that's not a big deal really, in the grand scheme of things, especially like maybe they were somebody utilizing it unofficially for a medical condition, things like that. So they have been federally pardoned, and that's great. But before Biden did this, people have been on the ground working to get people's records clear. So that's what the Last Prisoner Project was doing. They are a drug policy reform group as well. So not only are they working to expunge the records of those who were previously incarcerated, but they are also working to change the language and the policies of the laws when it comes to cannabis to make sure that things like that don't happen again moving forward. So definitely check them out. They have a lot of great articles, especially if you are in a state that isn't legalized yet or is working on getting legalized. They're a great resource. If you know anybody or if you yourself are somebody who has a criminal record because you were charged for possession, you got caught holding on to some cannabis at some point like that, definitely look into them. Definitely look into getting your record expunged. Getting your record expunged essentially clears that specific crime. So if you had a non-violent crime, right? This is really what we're talking about. Non-violent cannabis charges. If you were drug trafficking, like I said, with guns and humans, you probably ain't gonna get that record expunged. But otherwise, if you just had some long, try to get your record expunged, baby, okay? Because there's a lot of obstacles faced by formerly incarcerated people. If you were held on a misdemeanor or on a felony charge, right? Either one, the prison policy initiative does not really differentiate between that. So if you do have employers asking you about that background, about that history, that can be a major barrier to getting employed, when you get out. And along with that, if you were held on a felony charge, you receive a lifelong ban on SNAP benefits. So that's a major that's a major issue. So you can't get a job, right? If it's already hard to get a job, and then you can't even get state benefits for food, right? While you're trying to transition back and reintegrate into this normal life, what exactly are you gonna do, right? So that's a lot of that's a major issue a lot of people face just in general here in America, but something we should keep in mind. So Last Prisoner Project, they do work on expunging records, on advocating, on highlighting change, and on making drug policy reform. And they do also have some full circle moments. So I do believe they sell their own cannabis raised by formerly incarcerated peoples to fundraise back into the organization to help get other people's records expunged. So definitely check them out. Alright, y'all. Next thing here is going to be Stoner Moment Explained. So just talking about some common occurrences you might have ran into in your life at some point, or seen your friends run into. Didn't quite know why it happened, but just know that you might not want to do it again, or just want to understand what was going on. So this Stoner Moment Explained today that we're going to talk about are edibles in you. Did you take an edible and feel like you got high and then really, really high? You did. So there is a chemical reaction going on when you ingest, when you eat cannabis, right? So maybe you got a brownie, maybe you got infused cookie, maybe they put in a jam, however they do it, because they can infuse it any kind of way now these days. But once you ingest the cannabis, it takes a longer time for it to go into effect, right? Compared to if you're smoking or vaping or doing something like that, because you have to break it down in your stomach, and then your body has to go ahead and, you know, transition everything throughout your body. And because cannabis is fat loving, if you eat fatty, high fat meals, very buttery, oily kind of meals and things like that, you might notice the effects are feeling extra strong that particular day. And how things affect you varies a lot person to person, based off of just even just body composition, down to, of course, if you're on any other medication, things like that, down to, you know, if you're smoking, for an example, how you inhale. But right now we're going to be talking about edibles. So if you ate an edible, you know, you have to wait about an hour, 2 hours to see if it's actually, you know, going into effect, and definitely wait the time. Wait the time, and then wait a little more. It's better, I bet. I promise you. It'll be better if it didn't kick in and you know, all right, that's my baseline for it to not to kick in, versus going way too far. All right. So the thing is, when you eat your edible and you're waiting for it to, you know, take effect, once it finally does start to hit, that's the first stage, right? You're like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of high, things are going okay. Yeah, we're floating now. And at this point, you're strapped in for the ride because it's in your body. It's not like you can just stop smoking, which will stop the continued high effect. You're strapped in, right? So when you're strapped in, you're gonna be going up, and then you might hit a point where you feel like everything just launched back up there. You know, you hit a new level, everything spikes up, and you're feeling a lot higher, and that is because you are. So when you ingested that THC, that delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, it goes through a chemical reaction in your body, right? And this is called pharmacokinetics PK. Basically, it's the effect of your body on the drug. So it goes through this breakdown inside of you, and it changes from being THC into a different, stronger compound. So it turns into this different, stronger compound in your body, and that is the part where you're getting extra high. Like, it's the stronger effect, and that's what you're riding out for the rest of your edible experience until eventually it leaves your body. So if you do feel like you're going like too crazy, right? You ate too much of whatever and things are going down bad, I would recommend, first of all, to go somewhere quiet. Go somewhere quiet, somewhere dark, somewhere where there's not a lot of people or energy that's gonna throw you off, and kind of just sit down and try to have a breakdown, not a breakdown moment, but just have a peaceful moment to yourself, without being overly stimulated, right? Like, just go somewhere where you're not overly stimulated. If you don't start to feel better after that, or if you notice, like, maybe you're with some friend and they start to freak out and you're just like, go into this room real quick and, you know, try to lay down. If you notice that they're not getting any better, 30% of the cannabis in your body is eliminated by using the bathroom, right? Through peeing or, you know, taking a shit, if we're gonna be real. You know, real worst case scenario, in theory, you can take a laxative. If you feel like you are too trapped in, you could probably try taking a laxative, and I imagine you would probably sober up somewhere on that toilet. Now, the other thing I would just recommend is really just riding it out. That's the main thing, because once it's in your body, you just want to keep going. There isn't an antidote for cannabis intoxication, kind of like how opioids have Narcan to neutralize the effects. We don't have anything like that yet, but something should be on the way soon. But what you can expect is possibly a neutralizing effect coming out of using CBD. We'll talk more about how that could play a pivotal part into that, but basically CBD, if you have too much of your THC, that head high again is going crazy. The CBD also connects to the same receptors in your head where you're going head high, and it kind of knocks the THC off. So it's gonna essentially like decrease the psychoactive effect you might be feeling and increase the body high effect, like the pleasant floating feeling that you're experiencing. So there's definitely needs to be more research done on that, but in theory, with the way that they chemically work and, you know, adhere, that's something that you can also give a try. Otherwise, you know, just strap in, stick for the ride, and try to keep calm. So Stoner Moments Explained, edibles in you. Yes, you did get dumb high. The next thing we want to talk about is, you know, did you know moments. Did you know that dogs are actually a lot more sensitive to cannabis than humans? So if you do have a dog and you like to, you know, light your spliff and then blow it in their face because you want to get them high too, they're probably smacked, you know, and like not in a good way. They're probably like too far gone, kind of like how we were talking about with the edible, like their body just doesn't process and break things down the same way. If it's like a 1 for you, it's like a 10 for them, essentially is what that ratio looks like. So you never want to give your dog any kind of THC. You don't want any THC things going towards them. Don't blow the smoke in their face. What dogs can get is CBD. So again, that's the body high effect, less of that head high effect, and that's going to be good for their anxiety as well, and their stress. So, you know, you might see some owners give their dogs CBD treats during 4th of July, all the fireworks are going around, or if they have to go on a road trip and maybe they're really stressed, or like fly, things like that. So that's something you can check out for your animal if you do want them to benefit from cannabis. But if you're just like keep keying, maybe don't blow smoke in their face, they might throw up or something. So just so you know, now you do. So the last thing that we're going to close out with is just a random question to focus on. So the question today is smoking cannabis as bad as utilizing cigarettes? And the answer is no, not in the physical health mainstream way. We do know that when you smoke cigarettes, you ingest tobacco and nicotine, and that does lead to different types of cancers, like lung cancer, for an example, and it can have these debilitating effects. Now, research has been done on the effects of smoking cannabis for long-term use, and it does not link to cancer. You do not get lung cancer from smoking cannabis. What it has been shown to link to is COPD, and that creates lifelong damage to the lungs. So damage from COPD cannot be undone. So that is its own serious condition, but it's not cancer, you know? So you won't get cancer from smoking too much cannabis. And of course, too much indulgence is never good. So if you are a recreational user, you're just, you know, 18 and up, etc., and you just want to give it a try, give yourself some breaks. Give yourself some tolerance breaks. You don't need to overdo it. If you're a medical patient, your doctor, your certified physician, whoever you've been discussing this with, should have a plan put into place for you as well, so that you don't basically downregulate your body, like, so you don't get too used to the effects of the cannabis and it starts to wear off on you. So there should be some your own rotating plan based off of what your needs and medical history is going for. But again, cannabis is not linked to cancer. It is linked to COPD, which is serious and should be looked into as well, but it will not give you the big C when it comes to things. All right, y'all. So that's the Planet MRZ podcast. It's the first episode, Black History Month, February 2024. You feel me? And your girl's getting that master's degree in medical cannabis science and therapeutics this May. All right. See y'all later. Stay tuned, and we will check back in March.